Hello everyone, these days, people are interested in North Korea and its way of life, and the overall attention of people from all around the world is constantly growing. However, we know almost nothing about this country. Even if you meet one of those people who visited the country, you can hear absolutely contradictory opinions about life there. Nevertheless, today we decided to try and collect the most interesting and little-known facts about North Korea for you. Who knows, maybe this collection will help us to understand how the country itself and the North Koreans live. Let's go! According to the Constitution, the DPRK is a socialist country. In fact, the state is equally far from both communism and capitalism, and much more resembles a monarchy. Power in the country is only inherited. At the same time, the Kim Dynasty does not just rule from generation to generation, the best of them become demigods for locals, or at least mythical figures. Now let's return to the time of Kim Il-sung. After all, he was the person who turned into a real rebel hero. During World War II, he led combat operations against the Japanese from Mount Pakistan, which became sacred to all Koreans. North Korean propaganda supports the legend that Kim Il-sung took place in 100,000 battles with Japanese troops in 10 years. In other words, he had to fight 28 times a day. Even after his death, he remained in office. Kim Il-sung was recognized as the eternal president of the DPRK, and his birthday was made an official holiday. The Day of the Sun is celebrated on April 15th. Does it sound logical to you? In reality, the hero of North Korea spent most of World War II in Khabarovsk studying military affairs and Marxism. At the same time, the son of the great leader wanted to reach the level of glory of his father. Even the birth of Kim Jong-il was legendary because he was born on the Pakistan mountain in the camp of North Korean guerrillas. Like his father, Kim Jong-il worked without sleep and rest for the prosperity of the DPRK, improved the lives of ordinary people every day, and published many scientific works. You may doubt it, but these are the narratives that North Korean propaganda has been promoting all these years. Then it is not surprising that statues of Kim Il-sung and his son appeared all over the country. They received many high-profile titles and awards. Even after the death of the great rulers, their bodies were embalmed and placed in an impressive mausoleum in the capital. The memorial was called the Palace of the Sun, and they added information about their right to the Constitution. Are you still surprised? At the same time, the whole world knows that there are two Koreas. Maybe we're not 100% correct? Can you imagine that residents of the DPRK do not know this? I am 100% sure that you are at least surprised now. Just believe me, there are a lot of other, even more surprising things waiting for you. The thing is that North Koreans are taught from early childhood that there is only one single Korean People's Democratic Republic. And what if we take a political map of the world? You take one of their maps, which can be seen in any school or other institution, there will be only one Korea with its capital in Pyongyang. However, despite the fact that both North and South Korea could live perfectly together, each side still has its own reasons to keep everything unchanged. Let's just say that North Korea is a republic, at least officially. In fact, it's been ruled by the Kim Dynasty since 1948. In other words, we have a unique phenomenon of a socialist absolute monarchy. Its first leader was Kim Il-sung, who came into power in 1948 and ruled the country until his death in 1994. Over the years, he has even been awarded the title of Great Leader. His son, Kim Jong-il, ascended the throne and also ruled until his death in 2011. Despite the fact that he was an incredibly hot-tempered ruler with an overblown sense of self-importance, Kim Jong-il received the title of Favorite Leader. Since then, well-known Kim Jong-un became the head of the country. He is often called the Supreme Ruler and continues to keep North Korea in a tight grip like his predecessors. Have you heard anything about such an extremely specific and unique form of government as necrocracy? You're 100% correct. Such an approach assumes that the country is ruled by a person who has already died, and yes, North Korea is the only state on our planet in which such an unusual form of government is practiced. As I said at the beginning, the first ruler of the DPRK, Kim Il-sung, was posthumously awarded the title of Eternal President of the country. What does that mean? If you look into it in more detail, it means that the current head of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, his grandson, who bears the official title of the Supreme Leader of the DPRK, the leader of the party, army, and people, does not actually have the status of the president. What an unexpected twist! At the same time, this fact still does not change much in the life of the country and the entire North Korean people. Money, luxury, and status, as well as all the benefits they give, the late North Korean dictator had an irresistible craving for money and a great love for rich life. Few people know, but Kim Il-sung was one of the largest consumers of Hennessy cognac worldwide. What an interesting fact! It's also known that he invested more than $300 million in luxury goods every year. He literally surrounded himself in life with money and the most expensive things. However, this cannot even be compared with the approach of his grandson, the current ruler Kim Jong-un. Can you imagine that he spent over $600 million on his whims in just a year as the country's leader? And I'm not talking about how much money his family and inner circle spent. You may not have known, but North Korea has its own space program. At the same time, information about it and its successes varies greatly depending on the sources. It's well known that the DPRK's space program attracted international attention back in 1998 when it first attempted to launch a satellite, and it ended in utter failure. After that, there were 4 more launch attempts, the last of which occurred 7 years ago. 2 of their satellites still entered orbit, unlike their predecessor. However, there's one important thing here: they cannot be operated. While the North Korean government denies all information and states that all their launches were successful, and what else can they say? Do you at least know something about Songbuun? Or have you heard of such a concept? In fact, this is the class caste system of the DPRK, which exists independently of the ruling dynasty of the country. Its citizens are conditionally divided into 51 categories and 3 groups: enemies, hesitant, and loyal. The former include landowners, Christian priests, merchants, lawyers, and all their descendants. The latter include participants in the war against the Japanese occupation, as well as workers and peasants. The rest of the North Koreans are considered neutral. Some refugees who manage to leave the DPRK forever admit that the situation with the Songbuun affects many factors. For example, whether a person will be able to join the party, get an education and a position, and generally live happily. Even access to food can be determined by the Songbuun system. The worst thing is that this status, as it should be in the caste system, is inherited. And what could be worse? It turns out that even if you have just been born, you already have a kind of stigma that determines your entire future fate. For example, take a very capable young man with obvious mental abilities. Unfortunately, he will not be able to achieve anything special in life and will not become a great scientist or at least a good teacher, all because someone in his family was seen as doing defamatory actions. What is also important is that the status in Songbuun is assigned at the age of 17, and it is almost impossible to improve it, but it's very easy to worsen it. According to the State Department of the United States of America, the rule of punishment of 3 generations also applies within the framework of the Songbuun system. According to it, not only the political enemy himself can be sent to the camp, but also his relatives, including husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, and even grandchildren. And they will spend their whole lives behind barbed wire. Back in the distant 1990s, Kim Jong-il introduced the Jongun, or the Army First policy, which in fact predetermined the future of the entire state. Since the Democratic People's Republic of Korea pays special attention to the army, today it confidently ranks 4th in the world in terms of the number of active military personnel. This figure is impressive. They hired 1,320,000 people, and if you think about it that way, it's almost 5% of the total population of North Korea. But that's not all. You definitely understand that by counting the total number of military personnel, including active personnel, paramilitary formations, and the entire reserve, the number of people ready to go to war will grow significantly. If you want to get into the DPRK, and you do not have a Malaysian or Singaporean passport, you will have to apply for a visa. Even if it is approved, you can't be sure that you will get into the country. The worst thing is that you may not come back from it later. Fleeing the country is considered the biggest crime. After all, a true patriot will not leave their homeland on a difficult day, even though it is unclear when these most difficult days will end. At the same time, many people will never decide to escape it anyway because their relatives will have to pay a huge price for it. North Korea became one of the first countries to close its borders due to COVID-19. Already in January 2020, the government imposed significant restrictions on foreign travel for North Koreans, and at the end of the same month, completely closed the country to foreign tourists. Everyone knows about, to put it mildly, the difficult relations between North Korea and the USA. In 2014, North Korea posted a video in which soldiers at a shooting range with pistols and machine guns shoot targets with American soldiers painted on them. Moreover, there is another extremely strange video in which a little girl demonstrates her hatred of Americans. If you think that there are no homeless people or those who are beyond the poverty line in North Korea, this is not the case. Just look at this family that has to hide in the daytime. According to the mother, they can only go outside at night in search of food. Probably if the police pay attention to them, they will be arrested and sent to correctional camps. Mobile communication in the DPRK is limited and controlled by the state. Phones can be used only by a small circle of privileged citizens, usually working at the highest level of the party or military apparatus. The ownership and use of mobile phones by individuals are often prohibited or severely restricted. However, some North Koreans, especially in cities on the border with China, use Chinese cellular networks to communicate with the world. Women's pads are banned in the country due to ideological and cultural considerations, as well as limited availability of goods and services. The authorities are promoting the use of alternative hygiene products, such as fabric or reusable pads, instead of imported disposable products. The subway in Pyongyang is located deep underground. As in many cities of the former USSR, such a location is chosen due to the fact that the stations also served as bomb shelters. Usually, when talking about airports, people imagine huge terminals filled with fussy people who are running in the hope of catching their flight, or those who have already spent many hours waiting for connections. However, it is unlikely that anyone has seen Sunan International Airport in Pyongyang. Given that North Korean citizens can fly only in exceptional cases and foreigners are rarely given permission to visit the country, the airport is empty and receives planes only a few times a week. In the DPRK, there is a system of the so-called Songbuun social heritage, which divides the population into castes depending on political and ideological affiliation, as well as their connection with the ruling party. There are 5 main types in total: special, core, basic, problematic, and hostile. The upper castes include the highest ranks of the government, the army, and the party, while the lower castes consist of those who are considered unreliable or do not meet ideological standards. This system determines access to privileges, resources, and opportunities in the country. So, what is everyday life like in North Korea? Of course, we don't really know about this, but there are photos and videos taken by various international media and rare tourists. This is what a provincial town east of Kaesong looks like, located along the demilitarized zone. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un chose his armored train to travel to Russia on an official visit. One of the carriages where the journalists were allowed in had white walls, ivory curtains, and pink leather sofas. This vehicle can travel at a speed of about 60 kilometers per hour due to heavy armor. The wagons, which may contain the North Korean leader, are bulletproof and equipped with tinted windows. The female traffic controllers are dressed very elegantly, and their profession is highly respected. In rural North Korea, buses as we know them do not exist. Bicycles are the main means of transportation in the DPRK. Cars are incredibly expensive for an ordinary resident of the country. Besides, buying them is simply too expensive. In addition, the lack of gasoline makes such a purchase even more expensive. This photo was taken in Wonsan. This is what a North Korean celebration looks like. Pay attention to the tiny size of the dishes. Free trade is illegal in the country. However, after the famine in the 90s of the last century, changmadangs appeared. These are markets regulated by the state. Those who cannot afford a place behind the counter in the local changmadang try to sell their products on the street, but this can easily cause problems with the police. Portraits of President Kim Il-sung and General Kim Jong-il can be seen in every train carriage. Pyongyang subway is full of propaganda. This is a local school bus. For transportation, the children have to stay on top of each other. Soldiers of the Korean People's Army in uniform ride amusement rides at a park in Pyongyang. Folklore Street is a complex in the city of Sarawon, south of Pyongyang. Its goal is to present a romanticized version of ancient Korea. This is an ordinary street in the port city of Haeju. The sign says Cultural Revolution. This couple was photographed on their wedding day at the Pyongyang Botanical Garden. Apartment buildings all over the country are just cold, dreary, and weathered old concrete buildings. North Korea has frosty, snowy winters, and there is no central heating. This is the North Korean city of Haisan. Soldiers stand guard at the Yalu River. This is the giant Luna Park, the only amusement fair in the country. There are attractions from some other era. One can play archery, ball games, and use ancient swings, but most impressive are the planes equipped with machine guns. The infrastructure looks very worn out and unsafe, but one can still have a good time here. Pyongyang residents plant trees near the Mangyongdae School Children's Palace on the occasion of Tree Planting Day. North Korea has been experiencing a shortage of fertilizers since 2008, so in 2014, Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un called on farmers to use human feces along with animal waste and organic compost to fertilize fields. After that, it became possible to purchase human excrement in special stores. Residents of the DPRK even claim that such vegetables are much tastier. Doctors and scientists say that it is dangerous for health. For example, recently doctors found a huge number of parasitic worms on the body of one soldier, one of which reached a length of 28 centimeters. People walk past a kiosk where they can buy snacks. Such pavilions are a common thing in Pyongyang. They sell food, drinks, and even artificial flowers. Students read a report in the Rodong Sinmun newspaper about the visit of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to Vietnam. Men smoke while chatting outside of a supermarket in the center of Pyongyang. There is even a casino in the capital where one can play slot machines. A North Korean bride and groom pose for a photo at the Central Zoo in Pyongyang. Recently, you can notice the appearance of the residents of the DPRK on social networks. At first glance, they behave like ordinary people. They relax and show different food. but considering that internet access is strictly regulated, it is possible that this is an element of propaganda. These people walk through Kim Il-sung Square to watch fireworks during the celebration of the anniversary of the late North Korean leader's birthday. Agriculture is practically non-existent in the country, which is why many people eat what they can find, such as seaweed and roots. Kim Jong-un is still at a great age. He is about 40. Therefore, it is not surprising that the leader of the DPRK is aware of many modern trends. In this regard, he decided to help create a K-pop group in the country. It may seem strange, but in 2012, Kim Jong-un personally selected the band members who play musical instruments. According to the ruler, he wanted to modernize the pop scene of North Korea and make it more similar to the Western one. Did he succeed? In fact, he did. These girls appear on stage in short skirts or evening dresses and dance, which makes their performances somewhat resemble concerts of some foreign artists. However, if you look at everything they do on a larger scale, then of course, the performances of the Moranbong band looked North Korean. By the way, sometimes the band members dress up in military uniforms and perform accompanied by a military orchestra. However, their repertoire is also quite peculiar. The girls sing about devotion to Juche, the motherland, and the party. And their music has a pathetic note and is more like academic and symphonic than modern and popular. The DPRK has a 6-day working week, and on weekends, one has to do volunteer work. For example, cleaning the streets. Such a way of employment ensures that the average citizen simply does not have free time, which means they have no time to think about whether the party's policy is correct. Elections are held in the country every 5 years. There is only one candidate on the ballot, and one can vote against him, but they will have to do it in a transparent booth. This means that everyone will find out about it, and the consequences will not take long to wait. Kim Jong-un is trying to show that life in North Korea is getting better under his rule. To do this, he softened the economic laws a little. He allowed the operation of local markets and transferred some state-owned enterprises into private hands. But of course, all this is not enough, and some people in the country continue to starve. There are rumors that the North Korean leader has his own pleasure squad. This is a group of 2,000 of the most beautiful girls in the country. They must satisfy the chief, senior officials, and special guests. According to the members of this organization who fled the country, the girls receive a good salary. In addition, the ruler spends millions of dollars annually on the maintenance of such a squad. North Korean hackers stole as much as $0.8 billion in cryptocurrency to finance the DPRK's ballistic missile development program. The incident attracted the attention of the White House. American officials and security experts note that the country is increasingly seeking to focus its cyber attacks on obtaining funds, while significantly increasing its technical equipment to commit large-scale thefts. In 2022, representatives of the USA, Japan, and South Korea imposed sanctions on officials responsible for conducting the nuclear program and hackers involved in money laundering and cyber attacks to steal cryptocurrencies. But from January to August 2023, hackers associated with North Korea stole $200 million in cryptocurrencies, which is about 20% of the total amount of all cryptocurrencies stolen this year. On the 10th anniversary of Kim Jong-il's death, North Koreans were banned from laughing, drinking alcohol, and having fun for 11 days. The country was mourning. On the 7th of December, the day when the former ruler passed away, no one was even allowed to make purchases. The whole country was grieving. There are two simultaneous currencies in North Korea. One is the official North Korean won, used in government transactions and official operations. The second is the black market or foreign currency, such as US dollars or Chinese yuan, which are widely used in the ordinary life of the population. North Korea is facing a currency shortage and economic difficulties, which leads to different values of official currency and foreign currencies on the black market. Foreign currencies, especially US dollars, are often valued higher, and many prefer to use them. Now, it's incorrect to think that all power in North Korea belongs to exclusively the Kim family and their entourage. Not at all. The DPRK has a Supreme People's Assembly. At the same time, I would call it a local parody of the parliament. It consists of approximately 700 people, which are elected every 5 years. The meeting is convened quite rarely. In general, they meet to solve specific issues, and it is possible to get into it only by using staged national elections. Why do we call them staged? Simply because the ruling party nominates only one candidate from each district. At the same time, the current leaders of the country are also taking part in the elections, so what voters can do? They can vote for a candidate or vote against them by crossing out the name and putting the ballot in a separate ballot box. I think you immediately understand that such a dissonance can easily be found. In addition, nothing good can happen to these people. After all, there is no such thing as secret voting in the DPRK. Despite the fact that the elections of this format are purely formal, the people of North Korea consistently come to their polling stations and fulfill their civic duty. Now let's talk about taxes in the country. The DPRK is one of the few states on our entire planet whose residents do not pay taxes. What an unexpected twist! The fact is that tax collections were abolished in the northern part of the Korean peninsula back in 1974 as part of the Old World. As of today, only organizations and individuals who are outside the country for the purpose of earning money are not exempt from paying them. However, I can reasonably assume that everything will change soon. The thing is that the current North Korean government plans to return to the income tax in the near future. We'll find out for ourselves over time. Before the collapse of the USSR and the death of Kim Il-sung, the DPRK used a system of state distribution. The country distributed all benefits depending on the status of a citizen. So money in North Korea had almost no value, and bribes were meaningless. As you can guess, all the best and new things are given to top managers in the military. When the system finally collapsed, the people began to create their own private enterprises. For example, secretly plant vegetables in the garden for sale or sew clothes. Despite the fact that the government did not recognize the changes taking place in the country, it still made some steps to make people comfortable. It turned out that stores began to sell goods not only by using special cards, but also for money. At the same time, the same approach was used for all other elements of normal life. In other words, people started to get money, acquired goods, and a shadow economy. It was not recognized by the state, but it is still used to buy everything, even today. As of today, bribes in the country can solve everything. It's believed that almost everything can be bought for money there: medical care, housing, work, basic necessities, promotion, access to foreign media, and escape from the country, as well as such things as prison conditions and even release from arrest. An international anti-corruption organization called Transparency International has determined that North Korea occupies one of the leading places in the world in terms of its level of bribery. In the modern world, people have long been accustomed to using the Gregorian calendar, which is based on the year of birth of Jesus Christ. But North Korea lives by its own rules and laws. Local people use a similar system, only it is based on the birthday of their great leader, Kim Il-sung. One thing is remarkable: the chronology in the special calendar of the DPRK starts from 1912. It was the year of Kim Il-sung's birth, although the calendar itself was introduced only in 1997. Therefore, it is now the 111th year in North Korea, not 2023. However, in documents and newspapers, this date is still indicated in parentheses. Do you think it's allowed to be creative in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea? You're wrong. In fact, it is possible, but no one is allowed to depict the leaders of the country on their canvases. No one except one single art studio. It is called Mansudae and is located in Pyongyang. This studio is located on a huge plot of land with an area of more than 120,000 square meters. Of course, only the most talented artists with a big name work there, and all of them are graduates of the best art academies. It was in this art studio that the greatest monuments of the country were also designed and built. Surely you've already heard at least something about the Aang Festival, which takes place in North Korea. If not, then I will explain. In fact, this is a large gymnastics and art festival included in the Guinness Book of Records in 2007 as one of the most grandiose shows in the world. By the way, the unusual name of this event comes from the name of the Korean folk song of the same name, which tells about a separated couple. In the context of the festival, Aang symbolizes a divided Korea, but the most interesting thing is that about 100,000 people take part in it, and the entire population of North Korea is a little more than 25 million. In addition, the enchanting show is held at the Mayday Stadium named after the 1st of May. It is the largest multifunctional facility in the world, which accommodates 150,000 spectators. Such a scale is really impressive. On the border with South Korea is the village of Kijongdong, located near the demilitarized zone. In the Western media, it is often called the propaganda village. Why is it like that? Yes, it was simply built in order to show the southern neighbors all the attractiveness of life in the northern part of the Korean peninsula. By the way, in a completely closed North Korea, this is the only settlement that can be observed from the territory of South Korea. It was built in the 50s, at a time when electricity in rural areas was a luxury on both sides of the border. At the same time, the lights came on strictly according to schedule and in the same rooms while soldiers roamed the streets, and the same women washed the same windows for 15 years. Later, when technology allowed the southerners to see the village better, it became clear that the houses in Kijongdong are just empty boxes in which there are no floors, ceilings, or partitions. But now everything's changed. According to the official statistics of North Korea, today about 200 families of collective farmers live in Kijongdong. There are nurseries, a kindergarten, 2 schools, primary and secondary, and even a hospital at their service in the adjacent territory. Now, it may seem like something incredible, but the majority of residents in the DPRK are completely isolated from the internet. We are not talking about 2,000 chosen from the elite circles. Such an advantage as the internet can also be enjoyed by those who live in Pyongyang or other major cities and work or study in an advanced field. I have to mention that there is a special internet for them. It is called Kwangmyong. Such a network operates strictly within the country and provides limited access to a number of heavily censored websites approved by the state and a simple email client. At the same time, not only those elite people can use the internet, such a privilege is also available to employees of government propaganda or hacker units. Of course, these positions are considered the most prestigious and highly paid, and the reason for this is the desire of the official government to make sure that workers are not tempted to leave the territory of the DPRK as soon as they realize that the grass is not that green on the other side of the fence. The situation with the TV is almost the same. It's hard to even imagine how the North Korean people can watch only 4 television channels. The first is Korean Central Television, which usually shows historical propaganda, news, or some kind of emergency message. The second is Mansudae Television, which broadcasts various educational programs. The third is Ryongam-san Television, with more educational programs for students. And the fourth is Athletic Television. Judging by the name, it is already clear that this channel often shows all sports events with the participation of athletes from North Korea, as well as documentaries about sports in the country. The choice is small, but people can somehow live there. You want to know another very interesting fact about life in North Korea? The vast majority of the electric infrastructure of this country is hopelessly outdated and is literally falling apart. Although the state insists on replacing existing power plants that run on fossil fuels with renewable energy sources, this has not yet solved the problem of extremely irregular electricity supply. It is even difficult to imagine how one can live on schedule in our modern world. It turns out that most household electronic appliances and devices such as TVs and other equipment can be used exclusively at strictly designated hours in order to prevent network overload. As for general education in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, it is very much appreciated there. The state really cares about its citizens, providing them with free kindergartens and secondary and higher education. Nowadays, this is a very valuable achievement. Of course, the education system in North Korea can be very outdated in some areas, for example, international relations. But the level of literacy of the population in this country is really high, so we can safely say that the government has perfectly coped with its task in this aspect. You may say that such a statement is too loud, but in fact it's true. In the DPRK, it is strictly forbidden to call newborn children by the name of their ruler. If a child with the same name is already growing up in the family by chance, parents are obliged to urgently change their name. Does it sound strange? Yes, it does. However, this is not the first ban of its kind in North Korea. In 2011, Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, issued the same decree regarding his name. However, their grandfather and father, the legendary Kim Il-sung, was the first to take such a step. As you know, in North Korea, a lot is passed down by inheritance, and what's even more interesting, all the early bans in the DPRK are still in effect to this day. This is quite an unusual and rather strange fact, but the inhabitants of the southern part of the Korean peninsula are taller than their counterparts from the northern part by 3 to 8 centimeters. This was found by a scientist from the University of Songbuun in South Korea. He also suggests that the difference in height may be caused primarily by nutrition. And it's not just the famine of the 1990s, the diet of these people in general is much poorer. In fact, North Koreans get 1.4 times fewer calories, and it doesn't look like the situation could change dramatically for the better in the near future. I want to share some really sad statistics. According to the General Definition of Hunger, a special method for calculating the level of hunger based on UN and WHO data, 42% of residents in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea are malnourished today. The Korean peninsula was divided into two parts after the end of the war in 1953. A buffer demilitarized zone can be found between them. The length of the zone was 241 kilometers and the width was 4 kilometers, 2 kilometers each to the south and north. It was at this distance that the armed forces of both countries were withdrawn from the places of clashes. It is fenced with barbed wire and guarded by snipers, ready to shoot at anyone who approaches it. Given the fear of imprisonment or even the death penalty, most North Koreans would never have decided on such an escape attempt. In the video, a mother and her daughter are trying to swim across the river in search of a new life. Unfortunately, their actions were unsuccessful. Law enforcement agencies noticed them and managed to detain them. Soon after, the mother and daughter were convicted. The following were published illegally. They were leaked by those who want to reveal the truth about North Korea to the world. Some videos will just shock you. Someone filmed how people tried to enter the territory of the Japanese embassy. However, their attempt to escape was brutally suppressed by the police. 3 men managed to escape, but the woman and child did not.
And how do you like such a twist? To be honest, I can't do without your comments here.
This is the official TikTok of the DPRK, where you can see propaganda videos about a happy life in the country. However, this social network, like many other things, is inaccessible to ordinary people. These videos are being filmed in order to show the world how happy the people of North Korea are. Most of the people in these videos seem pretty scared. It's like they're being threatened with something very bad. Now, this is what the streets in the center of Pyongyang look like during the day. There are very few cars and people. The traffic controller, when she saw that she was being filmed, began to pretend that she was directing a non-existent flow of traffic. In North Korea, the state even regulates hairstyles. There is a certain list of allowed options, and there should be no deviations from it. 14 ideologically correct haircuts are provided for men, and 15 of them are offered to women. Usually unmarried girls prefer longer hair, but they can't go below the shoulder blades. Middle-aged women have a wave hairstyle, and the elderly have a short and voluminous one. It is forbidden to dye hair for everyone, regardless of gender and age, but one can hide gray hair. The Rungrado Mayday Stadium in Pyongyang is one of the largest in the world. It is designed to accommodate 150,000 spectators at a time and impresses with its original shape. 16 arches frame the stadium around its perimeter. Today, it is used for local football matches, sports competitions, and tournaments. At the same time, the main purpose of the sports arena is to hold a mass holiday called Ararang. In 1995, a major show of 8 professional wrestlers took place at Pyongyang's Mayday Stadium. At that time, 340,000 people visited it in 2 days. According to Jushi's ideology, North Korea should be a self-sufficient country. Accordingly, imported products, including clothing, are prohibited. Local jeans are made here because it is very practical, but they should not be blue since this is the color of world imperialism. The internet in North Korea is strictly controlled. An ordinary person can only access 28 sites and only with special permission. The general principle of nutrition in North Koreans has remained unchanged for decades. Wealthy people can afford fish and meat relatively regularly. The middle class has to eat rice, while the poor have nothing but corn. At the same time, many do not have money even for it. Children suffer the most from malnutrition. To make matters worse, the country does not purchase suitable medicines for medical care. At the same time, it should be noted that the cost of importing food for Kim Jong-un is about $5 million per year.
Have you also noticed that our time together flies at the speed of light? We can't wait to see you in our next episode. See you soon!